who is the event manager for the chamber. Co-host is Karim, and the panelists, obviously, between Jose and Kuno, they will be talking about the mining challenges that we are facing right now. And in viewer mode, all the attendees. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see who are the other attendees, or we cannot hear you, but please feel free to send any questions or comments through the chat, and we're gonna make sure during the Q&A session at the very end, we are gonna cover all that. So after saying that, let me stop there, and let me share with you the presentation that we have here. Allow me just 1 second. Okay. So the Peruvian Canadian Chamber of Commerce, we have a new slogan this year. Thank you very much for this, Lisbeth. It's the creating opportunities and connections. That's what we want. We want to connect companies from Peru to the Canadian market and Canadian companies into the Peruvian market. And start to see from their reality what are the great aspects of being international and the challenge that we are facing these days. So today we are going to talk about reinventing the business mining, and we have two very different points of view. On one side, Jose is going to focus on what is to do exploration, and on the other side, Kuno, we have a different aspect of how to do acquisitions, and I will let him to develop a little bit more of the idea. Kuno, as a lawyer from Peru, has a vast experience, and you have seen probably in the invitation, in Peru and here in Canada and internationally. So it's really a pleasure to have Kuno right now. He is not only, as a legal, he became an executive director, which is really a great deal in Canada and worldwide, I would say. And Jose, well, not only being the president and director of O3 Mining, which is a key company developing here in Canada, but the experience that Jose has started in Peru. His dad also is the president of the Peruvian Canadian Chamber of Commerce in Peru. So he's already a family of miners from Peru and now moving here to Canada. So it's also a really pleasure to have you, Jose, with us today. At the very end of the questions, we are going to have some Q&A. So, being 11:04, I think it's time for me to stop talking and let the panelists to really share with us all the knowledge that they have. So the first question, let me see where did I have the questions for you guys? Allow me 1 second. Yeah. So Kuno, how do you think the mining business has been affected by the COVID-19 in Peru and in Canada?
Thank you, Arturo. And just before I start, I want to thank the Peruvian Canadian Chamber of Commerce for the invitation, for you to organizing, and everybody that is here for adapting to this new reality. And just a very small correction, I'm the Executive Director of Antofagasta Minerals Canada, leading the North American team, and not the company headquarters in Chile. To your question, and I think this webinar is an example of how the entire world has been affected by COVID-19 and how people have adapted to a new reality. It's not just mining business, it's all businesses that have been affected during this pandemic. You've seen a recession that has been adverted in all countries in this world, and that has kind of like been reduced by measures of the governments, and the mining industry is just a part of that. Relating to us, and I am a little bit biased by the copper market because Antofagasta, the company I work with, is a copper producer. I can speak very clearly without a doubt. We have had a very large impact. Price of copper itself by August have decreased by 12.5%. And today we're having a bounce back to a level that is on the other side. We have copper prices at 304 today in the morning, and it has been in the $3 per pound level for the last 2 weeks, which is actually the highest point that copper has been in the last 2 years. So you see that there's an entire situation that is, first of all, was not predicted at the beginning of the year, and second is a consequence of continuing measures that are happening. Now, when you see mining, I will separate this in two spheres. You have the operations on one side, and you have all the CapEx activity and investment in development and exploration. I will speak first from what concerns to me, which is operations. As Antofagasta, we've been very lucky that our main operational assets are in Chile, and we have been able to continue producing without interruption during this pandemic. We obviously had many challenges we're going to talk today, and we have adapted our operations to the health concern and new safety standards, but the operations and our production has been unaffected. Our EBITDA and the EBITDA of most of the mining companies, as I mentioned, have been affected. In copper markets, we have seen a decrease of 12.5%. And this is because we are in the price, right? And we are price takers. Therefore, like, this affects the entire guidance for the year. In Peru, you see a slightly different story, because you see that most of the mining operations have been suspended, especially at the beginning of this pandemic. And even though Peruvian government declared mining activity as one of the essential activities that could continue working at a certain time, I think most of the companies have been have taken the careful approach and suspended at a very early stage to avoid the spread, which obviously has affected production. Today you have a shortage in production, which partially justifies the price that we're seeing in the case of copper. And you have been seeing also many impacts in the supply chains that have been affected by all the global closures. So we have for sure seen on the production side a great deal of shortage of production, but also on the development and the exploration side, which is part of my concerns. I work looking for new projects and for new investments in Canada and Peru, elsewhere. And the first thing with this when the pandemic measures started, was to suspend all non-operational activities. So we focus in the core aspects of the business, which is keep producing copper. We had a $1 billion expansion going on in Chile for a mine of Pelambres. We have other development projects, and all of those were temporarily suspended. And all of our activities in Peru and in Canada were also suspended, because we didn't want to risk the health and safety of employees, and also in many places it was simply not possible to go and do exploration or looking for new projects. Right now we are at a stage where we are evaluating how to resume this, considering the new safety measures. But certainly we've seen a slowdown in the level of investment, and we need to having health and safety as the cornerstone of all what we do in this industry. Our main concern is that our employees and also the communities in which we do mining and we do exploration are safe. So I don't know if, Jose, you have a similar view or not, but that's my general view on the impact so far.
I think you're right. Everyone has been able to adapt. At the end, we didn't have an option, no? So you have to essentially follow the different regulatory measures that were taken in different countries, right or wrong, more strict or less strict. At the end, we we as operators, either as producers or explorers or different industries, because we all had to adapt. The different individuals that work in the restaurant business, or that works in manufacturing business, or or even the guys that works in the internet, that probably were not affected as much, but it certainly has put into perspective a new, without a doubt, a new norm. Yeah, I mean, I think, to your point, we all adapt, and one thing that we have to feel, in a sense, proud of our industry is that, in general terms, mining adapts quite fast, because we're used to follow protocols and we're used to follow instructions. If we see, as an example, Sudbury, Ontario never closed mining. It was always essential. And Sudbury started with one of the highest cases initially. In Sudbury, we have most of the largest mining operations in Ontario, but yet was the one that reacted the fastest and most efficient without closing anything and without stopping anything. And today, I think they have no cases, or one case. I don't know if they had more cases now that school started, but it was really unbelievable, the response they had. In the case of Quebec, where we operate, exploration was suspended. In the case of mining, was suspended as well, originally, but mining began or was reintegrated into the system very fast. I think only took 14 days in terms of the stoppage. And then in the case of exploration, on the 14th of April, we were back to operate under, of course, a lot of new norms, a lot of new procedures that we had to implement, which we all do, whatever we believe is the best we can do. Of course, there are some norms given by the government and you have to follow them. But if you are a responsible manager or responsible CEO, you will implement on top of that what you believe is the best for your employees. Because at the end, the only thing that we cannot forget from all these stories is that it is a pretty deadly virus, and we have to protect our own employees, our own teammates, our own group of individuals that are with us, and the people we care, the best we can. So that's the most important thing at the end.
That's very insightful. Definitely, all the mining companies here in Canada, they were able to adapt to this new pandemic. So, Jose, based on your experience, hands-on experience, what kind of measure or safety training or protocols do you think you have implemented that you will keep on implementing in the future?
Yeah, when COVID was initially announced, we didn't know as much. I mean, I still remember flying from a conference in February from Florida to Toronto. It was I was really surprised with a couple of guys using a mask. I said, wow, I mean, that's incredible. And it was only 2 weeks after that we were in Lima with my family for March break, and they declared state of emergency, and we had to stay there for 2 months. So it was very fast how this evolved and how rapid this virus was expanding, and how much it affected. So in our case, to your point, the first thing we said was everyone stayed at home, and let's see first what's going on. So we had in a sense, the luxury that we were almost finishing our winter campaign. So we only needed like another 10 days, which really affected us economically as well, but we were able to suspend everything. Everyone were working from home. We managed to spend time doing strategy and working on different 3D models that we do in geology and and everyone were working through Zoom. I didn't know about Zoom until this happened, and we adapted very fast. And then it's Zoom, and now it's Teams, and then it's Jeans, and then it's WebEx, and you name it. I mean, you just I think I have more meetings now than what I had before, and I am much more connected than before. It's incredible, and I was in the same office. So we have to look, and I prefer to look into the positives and the opportunities rather than the difficulties and the challenges we face, because otherwise you're just going to be, I'd rather just be moving forward. In any case, to your point, everyone were working from home. When we decided to came back, we implemented the temperature measures, coming in, going out. We set up stations with alcohol everywhere. We put a division, that was an idea with one of our logistics guys. They put a division in the cars when we were transiting. So now there is kind of a plastic there on the back and in the front, so the co-pilot and pilot do not communicate to each other. And then we reduced the amount of people in the office, so we could actually have only like as many people where we can maintain the 2 meters distance. So we pretty much cancel every other seat because we had open space logistics in terms of for the office. And well, I mean, we were really lucky in the sense, and lucky and privileged that the Canadian system actually works. If we think about COVID and what really happens in Canada, Canada never had more than 14% of their total capacity in the medical health system full. 14%, 1/4. So if you get COVID and you're not doing well, you have the opportunity to have a bed. And if you're not doing well, there is an ICU bed for you, and certainly a ventilator, something that unfortunately we don't have in Peru. And that is where we have to adapt and take measures maybe different in the case of Peru. I'm not here to judge one way or the other. I'm just saying that there are different circumstances, and I don't know which is the right approach, because Sweden did not stop anything, and yet they seem to be very fine. And I don't know. I do think that were things that were supposed to be done different in Peru, but that's for another time. This is not a moment to criticize anyone.
Fantastic. Do you have some similarities or some different approach in your case, Kuno?
No, it's very, very similar. I mean, and I probably will again make a division between what is our operations and what is our exploration or investment projects. On our operations, certainly is a very similar case to what Jose has implemented. Like we certainly have, I mean, distancing has been a cornerstone of obviously all the measures that any company has implemented, making sure that people don't interact much with each other. In our case, what we did at the very start of the pandemic is every worker that was non-essential for an operative measures was sent to work from home, and or temporarily sent for home until their activities could be resumed. And we've only keep people working that safely can go to the mines to do so. So we have demobilized about 2,000 employees from the mines. We've implemented remote working, as Jose is saying. I think that's a big surprise, and that's one of those things that are one of those measures that are here to stay. Before the pandemic started, we have started a pilot program to allow people to do remote working. And it was like a 3-year program at that time to test how people could interact working partially from home, partially from the office. So we were basically forced to take this 3-year program to a 3 months, like you are already into it. And now I can say that what we're seeing is that what people thought it was impossible, which was having everybody doing this remotely, suddenly it's not only doable, but also has a lot of efficiencies in certain ways. It's not a perfect work, then you have challenges ahead because you need to try, while you can have the meetings and you can direct a lot of things remotely, you need to see how, for the future, to this to be sustainable, how you did with attachment of your workers to the corporate feeling, the motto, etc. Because obviously, as you keep bringing people, it's not the same to be and meet everybody just on a Teams call than do it directly. But all of those things that I think we're implementing, we're doing it good. Health and safety protocols for sure. I mean, obviously, as I said, this is a cornerstone of all mining operations. So this is nothing new for us. We just improved them. And now we have like more direct checks with our people. We have obviously daily checks of temperature control. Nobody accesses the mine if it has any symptoms. And today you can see that we don't have anybody with a flu in our operations, right? So, and those are things that probably are here to stay as well, because what we're seeing is that there's no reason to put the safety of the people, even for a small flu, under jeopardy, because when you have alternative ways to do it and alternative ways to have people working from home. So our measures have been very similar, I think, and also we have obviously increased travel protocols for people. Having that said, as of that date, we have suspended all traveling activities that are non-essential and that we cannot defer. So we are still monitoring when we can resume them. I think we might be being extra cautious because in Canada, for example, we have a team that is in British Columbia and that could perfectly well travel within British Columbia or Yukon or other like West Territory areas of Canada, where provinces where we have some investments or some interests, but we are taking a careful approach, and we are hoping that we could resume those hopefully by October, being cautious and monitoring what is going to happen with these reopening programs that we have, right? So far, Canada is done pretty well, controlling and passing the curve and keeping the numbers low. But now that most of the provinces are basically at the last stages of the reactivation plans and that kids are going back to school, we need to see what's going to happen at the beginning of October and see if this is going to be sustainable or if we're going to have an increase. And that's the approach we're taking for all of activities, as I said, that are non-core.
Excellent. Yeah. It's great that the Canadian mining projects or Peruvian mining projects are adapting to that. Based on your experience, Kuno, what will be the similarities and difference between mining projects in Peru and Canada due to the pandemic?
Look, what I would say basically for what we are doing the works is in Peru, we've seen a wider suspension of activities for sure. We completely stopped doing our employees up to the day are still working from home. And only now we're starting to implement the measures to allow them to go back to the offices. The Peruvian government has taken an approach that is a little bit more prescriptive and slightly burdensome, for saying that in a way to create a plan, to get it approved by the minister and a lot of measures that at the beginning, especially when they implemented, were hard for us to understand. So I think we are there now where we understand what we need to do to take the people back to work, but it's been more challenging from that perspective. In Canada, as I said, we were able to have our people doing a lot more activity, but we took, in our case, the decision to stop the works. I think that's not the case of many other companies. And you can see that a lot of junior exploration companies, for example, that are based in Vancouver, where the restrictions have been less, have been doing tons of work these days. They have like amazing results, and they actually have been raising a lot of money in their capital market. So I haven't seen a reduction that I was expecting was gonna occur. At least that's my view of where that is. But other than that, I think generally every company that has strict health and safety requirements have taken a very conservative approach, no matter where, and that's my feeling. And with the difference being in Canada, probably more companies have either not interrupted or restart like activities on a cautious way. In Peru, I still see a lack of this, and I see less activity happening these days.
That's fantastic, Kuno. And the fact that you just mentioned that you were raising more money, that exactly leads to the next question. It's like and that's for you, Jose. How will be the future investment in Peruvian or Canadian mining projects be affected due to the pandemic?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
How will be the future investment in Canadian mining projects be affected due to the pandemic? So if the pandemic has an effect on the investment that you get from your investors, or
this is a very, very important point and a very sensible point in a sense, because really this is a moment where we have to stop and think not only why money is coming to Canada, but I mean why it's not going to other places. And in that regard, we always have to have in consideration that in a sense we are competing, and we as a Canadian mining company operating in Canada, we feel very proud of working where we work, such as Quebec, where most of our projects are, and in Timmins, where we have almost 2 million ounces with Garrison. So just between these two areas, we have pretty much 6 million ounces of gold right now in our company. And I say that because we tend to believe and we tend to take that for granted. And in circumstances like this one, you realize how important it is to have the right jurisdiction where your projects are, because in a circumstance like this, in May, in the middle of the pandemic, we were able to raise $40 million. Why? Because we were in one of the most privileged jurisdictions, such as Valdor. I don't know if we were somewhere else, if we had the opportunity to raise the same amount of money. But that is a commitment from the Canadian government and from the different authorities in the places where we work. They don't take for granted that money comes. They make sure that everyone is well served, and they make sure that not only the company do the appropriate things, but they also make sure that the different groups that are in a way related to the mining company are also being given the right help, if you want to call it. I was talking to a couple of groups a couple of days ago, and I was saying that for us to get our permits, we get the permits within 2 days. I am a board member of a company listed in Toronto where we operate in Peru, and it's a mining production, and it has taken us still until now, we don't have the permits, and it has been 6 months of trying to get permits to drill in the Andes of Peru, in the central Andes, in an area where it's a mining area. So we have to be very cautious and careful when we just say that, you know, promoting it's just okay. No, it's vital and it's very important. And we as Peruvians, we have to help our own colleagues, our own compatriots, our own authorities to understand that we are competing for every cent. I mean, investors don't really choose if they want to go to, or actually they do choose if they want to go to Canada or Peru, or if they go to Mali, or if they go to Colombia, or if they go to Ecuador, or if they go to anywhere. It's always how much money you put in, how much money you're going to get out. So we have to be very cautious of that regard. So in summary, how much did it affect it to us? It affected us, but we were very lucky that we were operating in Valdor, so that allowed us to have more flexibility. And the second part is that, of course, every time there is an economic crisis, such as what happens in the 1930s or in 2008, or now with COVID, gold prices goes up, and of course there is an appetite for gold, and we were extremely fortunate to be at the time, at the right time, with over 5 million ounces now. After we put out our PA a couple of days ago, 5.9 million ounces in our portfolio. So there is certainly an appetite for that as well.
Excellent. So talking about investors, and this is for you, Kuno, based on your experience, what is the advice that you can provide to investors such as millennials or young people to this new reality in this mining industry?
Well, to investors, I think my advice is keep investing. No, but no, I don't say it as a joke. I think just taking on what Jose said, I think the mining industry is key and essential for the development of economies. In the case of Peru, it's essential for the development of Peruvian economy, Chile, of Canada, and I think mining has a bright future. So if I speak just from where my house is in the copper environment, I think copper is a mineral that is essential to the future of the world and the recovery in general. When you see now the measures of China and all the stimulus packages that governments are putting, infrastructure is key, and copper is an important part of that recovery and infrastructure project. Also, like, it's part of the future when you see the new digital economy and the need for renewable energies, where copper is a big part and a big player of the industry. So if you're an investor, this is the day to invest in copper. But this is a day in general to invest in mining, because you have seen how resilient the industry has seen. I mean, and Jose just put the example also in gold, and how it interacts and interplays with in general in the capital markets, and how, even though we have had like the worst crisis that all of us probably have experienced during our life, the mining industry has been able to be resilient, even though we have had to get used to new ways of living ourselves. We are now, I'm speaking you from my home and not from the office, and many other people is the same. Mining has continued to operate, has continued to produce, and the prices are showing today. I mean, I don't know how sustainable our copper price is these days, because obviously it depends a lot of stimulus package and many other things, but it shows a scenario of resilience and future, and it's a good place to put your money. So if you're a young investor, this is your time, and you can go and buy shares of O3 Mining. Obviously, you're going to be doing a great investment. Go and buy shares of Antofagasta, and go and buy shares of any mining company you can. Do your research and do it well, but like, good operators are going to be profitable in the long term.
Fantastic, great. So we have already almost reached the time. There are too many questions still to ask, but I just want to make one last question. Jose, what does not let you sleep at night these days?
Well, before I answer that question, let me talk about the millennials, because I really like that point. I'm certainly not a millennial by a couple of years, but I think it is really important that millennials becomes honest with themselves, with ourselves, because we tend to judge or prejudge an industry that has been able to adapt for so many years into so many circumstances, and we don't give enough value to what mining does. And to Kuno's point, and in terms of copper is really in every single industry that we can imagine. It's everywhere. And we tend to forget that even gold as a microconductor, it's in the cell phones as well. So it is very important to be at least honest with that. If we want to judge, I think we have to be consequential. So if they start by not moving in a car and not using a cell phone, maybe I'll have a little bit more of time for them. But I think actually for millennials, this is an industry that will give back to the communities. It's an industry that gives back to society, and therefore is an industry that they should be part of in their investments. The amount of jobs and the amount of quality of life and the amount of lives that we change, especially in areas where not a lot of people wants to live on, because we don't choose where the deposits are going to be found. And certainly they're not in the middle of Toronto or in the middle of Lima. They are in very remote areas, very cold areas, and we're able to adapt. I think there is a lot of merits to be given to the mining industry, and of course I feel very proud and part of it, and I just want to encourage everyone to look into that. What does not allow me to sleep is to think about how difficult will be a second wave. I try to believe and assume that this will be better managed because we know where we are and we are taking better measures. But I just don't know how is that going to be. And certainly, I don't think we have seen any of the consequences of this. You know, the pandemic of the 1930s only provoke a lot of destruction. And maybe the only good thing that happened from that was that World War I was finished. And maybe that was the only positive that I could see immediately. But that also came with a very big depression in the 1930s. I don't think we have seen the consequences, the economical consequences of what has happened with COVID. In the case of Peru, in the last 3 quarters, I think we have been moving numbers like minus 50% in terms of PVA, minus 30% of GDP, which is in the PVI. And that's an important thing to take care, and for the governments to have very, very drastic decisions to move forward. And one of the ways that we have as Peruvians, and not only as Peruvians, but in the world in general, to move out of a depression is by accelerating infrastructure projects. And in order to do that, you have to be ready to be able to execute, no? So for example, in the case of Peru, we have over $60,000 million, so $60 billion that needs to be put into value. And we could be part of the solution to turn around this economic problem. I don't think we're seeing the right dimension of where we are. And once those projects are into production, we can think about more highways, we can think about more bridges, we can think about more hydroelectric power. I think this is the time where we have to think a little bit bigger. I think this is the moment where, from an economical standpoint of view, a Keynesian system will work better than being very conservative. I think this is a time where we need to spend, but if we're going to spend, it has to be in infrastructure, and certainly with very I don't know if the word is good, but I mean respected companies, so we make sure that no one is taking advantage of that. And I think that applies to Peru, and that applies to Canada as well. Canada will have to invest in infrastructure. And again, I don't think we have seen not even the tip of the iceberg of the economical consequences of this COVID situation. I don't know, Kuno, if you have any.
No, I agree.
We're doing very well in 3 years in terms of copper price. Maybe in 1 year, you never know. But I'm sure copper will be reaching the highest levels we have seen.
No, I fully agree with that, Jose. And with copper price, we have been telling consistently for the last 2 or 3 years that the actual price of copper was not reflecting the fundamentals of the business. And there were a lot, I mean, before COVID, a lot of conjunctural aspects like the trade war between the US and China and things like that, that actually affected the price in an artificial ways, because price should have been probably at a higher level. But today, I think everything that we're seeing today is artificial and is a consequence of the stimulus packages that are being sent by the governments currently in this point in the crisis, right? And when that stops is when we're going to see really what's the effect of COVID. And we're going to see, and hopefully that's not going to stop. And these packages and these measures are going to be consistent, and we're going to be timed in a way that they will catch the markets after we pass the health crisis. The health crisis, as it has occurred in the past, is going to pass. We don't know when. Most likely with a vaccine, and hopefully that's going to be it, and we're not going to have one of these in a long time. At some point it's going to be a new one, but when it passes, it's important that the governments are preparing all of these temporary measures connect with the fundamentals in the economy, so that we don't see a shock, right? And for that, consistent investment in infrastructure, consistent and models that will integrate what is really happening in the markets are very important, and the governments hopefully will understand that. In the case of Peru, there's going to be a change of government next year, and hopefully the measures are going to be also consistent with what the industries need, and I hope they don't attack like the formal companies and the companies that are actually following protocols and want to invest. Jose made a very good point. Getting a exploration permit takes a lot of time, right? So you are competing with funds, you are competing with investors, and what you want to attract is investors that think, hey, a project, it's doable to invest in a project in this jurisdiction because this project is going to be developed, and it's going to be developed within a decent time frame as compared to other jurisdictions, right?
And that, Kuno, is a very, very important point what you made there, because what are investors really looking for? Let's take for an example O3. An investor comes, buys their shares in the Toronto Stock Exchange venture or TSX. They buy the shares of O3, and they're going to say, I paid today $2.40. How can you guarantee me that I'm going to go to $5? So if I tell them, well, I mean, maybe I will drill, maybe not, depends on the permits, he's not going to invest, because how is the share price going to go up? And everyone wants to invest because they want to make money. We cannot forget about that part. Money is not a bad word. Money can be used for good or for bad, and we need to start taking that out of our heads. Making money is a good thing if you use it for the right and appropriate things. So if you do get the permits passed, then you can drill, then you can show results. They could be good or bad, and if they're good, you go up. If the results are bad, then you go down, and that's the risk you take in exploration. If you go into production and you're going to invest into a major company, let's say Antofagasta cannot produce more copper than before, the share price is not going to go up. If they don't have better margins, if they start having in Chile more contingencies in terms of labor and increasing the different requirements for that, and their margins are less, the share price will not continue to go up. So at the end, if you want to distribute the wealth, you need to create wealth. There is no way to distribute without creating, and that applies to any single economic measure we want to take.
And just to complete that idea, I mean, from our standpoint, you need to understand that when you're investing, and this is a position we have, you have competing options. So our CEO can choose to put the company's money in increasing a current operation and do more exploration around our existing assets, or go to a different country and invest in Peru and invest in Canada. And for that, you need to compare what is going to be the cost. what's the feasibility of that? Is if developing an exploration program is going to take me 3 years, and when in Chile it takes me 2 days or 3, you know, or just for saying anything, and it's going to cost me 3 or 4 times more, I'm not going to invest. Now, the reason why we are focused in Peru, in Canada, in North America, in Americas in general, is we think we can find assets that are going to be profitable and that we're going to be able to develop. And we have a lot of confidence that it's going to be possible, but we need the help of the governments on this regard. And hopefully the Peruvian government, to what concerns to us here, is going to be a part of that. And I think for that is very constructive what we're doing here, what the Peruvian Canadian Chamber of Commerce and other institutions and groups are doing to try to influence and to try to spread knowledge about these matters, so that hopefully the industry can adapt in the ways it needs, and hopefully this knowledge is shared by everybody else.
Wow, there is a lot of knowledge between you guys and experience regarding the mining industry. The chamber is really privileged to have you. Having go through the first set of questions, we are going to allow the attendees to make some questions and answer, maybe 1 or 2 questions. I know your time is valuable, but I'll appreciate if you can answer 1 or 2 at least. So to all attendees, please feel free to send a question. And let us know if you... Okay, so we got the first question from Ana Trujillo. She says, good morning. I believe that the social responsibilities of your company is important. How mining could boost their corporate social responsibility in this time of pandemic? José, Kuno, who wants to answer that one?
The first thing and the most important thing, this is a very difficult situation, which is affecting everyone. And the most important thing is to show respect to your own group of individuals that works with you. Those are your employees. So if by taking the right measures, that's how you start. It's kind of, you start by taking care of yours at home. And for me, the people that I love are people that works with me at the company. So by taking those measures is how you start. And then certainly by being involved in the actions that are being taken where we operate, by being close to the hospitals, by being close to the government in how we can collaborate together. And the good thing is that in the case of Canada, the relationship between government and companies is a very straightforward relationship where we cooperate in a very good manner. So it has worked very, very well. But I definitely think that ESG as environmental, social, and governmental, it's an extremely important part of what we do. And this is the time to show how much we care. So I think this is a great opportunity. I think, and we have taken that. I think, I hope I'm not wrong, that for our own group of employees, it will be very difficult to leave the company after how we behaved with them.
And I just want to add that to that. In our case, in the case of Antofagasta, the motto we have as a company is that we want to do mining for a better future. And we take that very, very seriously. As a mining company, we try to create a positive impact in the communities where we are. So regarding social responsibility, that's a cornerstone for us and where we are. I mean, Jose refers to the entire ESG, and so I'm just gonna go to the part of the communities, and we have also put a lot of effort, and during this pandemic we have seen an opportunity to actually help communities around where operations are, to donate respiratory machines where it's needed, to help like creating campaigns to create awareness about the COVID, the impacts, and improve the health and safety of the individuals. And also in every single activity and every single program that we do, ESG and social responsibility are the first thing we incorporate. And even that's one of the reasons, for example, during these times, we stopped some activities where we thought they were not going to be well received in certain communities, right? Or remote areas, where we have stopped exploration activities where communities are more vulnerable and more afraid about the effects of foreign people coming to their local areas and doing exploration or not. So we actually take this very seriously.
Excellent. We got a second, and that will be the last question from Juan Velasco. He says, if you guys can briefly compare the environmental standards in the mining industry between Canada and Peru.
You want me to start? I'm happy to do that. In fact, that's a very good point. The standards in general, first of all, there is the world standard, and then per country, everyone decides to do what they believe is the best. I think probably in terms of standards, in the case of Peru, we have gone beyond what the world is doing. And in any case, I think the standards are given per region and per locality. So we as mining companies, we have to adapt to the standards that are given to us, first of all. And from that point on, we will always do what we consider is better for our own area of operation. So we will, in some cases, even increase those standards. I think in the case, for example, of Canadian Malartic, where we where our group built the mine, there was no standard initially for noise, and together with the authorities, there was set up a standard, and but on top of that, it was a decision made by the company to build an infrastructure that mitigates the noise to the point of pretty much you put your ear beside the wall and you would not be able to hear anything for practical purposes. So at the end, I think the answer is you have to know what are the rules where we operate, and from that point on, you move forward. In my view, I think that Peru is taking just a point of being beyond being strict. That's my point of view.
Yeah.
Anything that you would like to add, Kuno?
No, I think, look, as a London-listed company with operations in many places in Chile and projects all around the world, I think we're subject to the highest standard possible. So for us, environmental standards are always above and beyond what any country requires. I agree fully with Jose that Peru has very strict standards. And I think it's important maybe not to confuse the gist of what the standard is or should be and regulatory or red tape. I think people sometimes confuse that, and people think that because there's more red tape on a process, there's a better standard, and that's not the case actually. So I think, and I hope the regulators, both in Peru and in Canada, as they continue to improve the regulation and the norms, understand that, right? Like, because there's no reason, as long as a company is protecting the environment and ensuring that the right measures are taken, hopefully the process to reach that result is not too cumbersome, which is sometimes what you see today, especially investing in Peru. That is a little bit cumbersome, and there's a lot of steps that you need to follow in between that are not necessary or that take too long, right? So that there's room for improvement for sure. But the regulation is, I think, and when you see serious mining companies, what are doing in Peru and companies doing in Canada, I think you can see serious companies are for sure following the higher standards.
Gentlemen, on behalf of the Chamber, we really want to thank you for this amazing panel conversation. It has been very enlightening. And thank you to all the attendees and to the people that ask questions. We appreciate. So thank you so much. This concludes the webinar. Thank you to everybody. I would like to ask José and Kuno to stay for a couple of minutes so you can see the rest of the Peruvian team that has been working hard to make this webinar possible. Flor, if you can let all the PCCC team to join and say hi to José and Kuno, that would be fantastic.
Sure.
Thank you.